before we get started, why don't you all take out your hymn books, please, and open to the hymn for the day. This will be the sermon hymn. Wide open are your hands. Do we have a page number? What's the page number there? It's not in the book? Put your hymn books away. You don't need them. My goodness. It's going to take a long time before I get this right, folks. I'm just used to that old green book. I can't help it. I'm going to guess it's going to be on the screen, though. So what will happen is, for those of you who have not heard me preach yet, or for those of you who are getting used to me, which is pretty much everybody here, I like to preach a little bit, and then I like to sing a little bit. And I do that mainly so that I put things in smaller pieces. And then the singing has a way of turning the words into a meditation. And it kind of helps you kind of sink into your heart. And then we'll preach a little bit, and we'll sing a little bit, and then I'll finish up. So that's what we're going to do here again today, and just be ready is what I would say. And so I had a little something here for the kids. I've got something for you as well. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a picture of the same thing right up there. This is prized possession. It was probably one of the best gifts that I got, going away gifts, because it has such sentimental value to me. It was given to me by my organist at St. Olaf. And it came in a box, and then the box was wrapped in another box, and there was a card. And so I opened the card first, and it said, one should always know where they are going. And then I opened the box, and there's this beautiful wood box inside. Open the wood box, and there's a marine compass. And it's beautiful, isn't it? It's absolutely beautiful. And so, and of course, the first time I opened it, which way was it pointing? Where was I? I was in Fort Dodge at the time. So true north was going up. Isn't that fun? I don't think Jason was thinking about that. I think he was probably thinking about true north being a direction to help you get around in life, and pointing towards true things, so that no matter which way you go, you'll always be heading in the right direction. And that's what compasses do, right? There's this outside force called the magnetic force, which is up that way, right, north. And you open up your compass, and maybe you want to head in this direction here. And if it's wide open, that's easy. So you take your compass reading and you head in that direction, right? And that's great when it's wide open spaces, but sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. So what you do then, those of you who've done a little Boy Scouting, you'll find a direction, maybe a tree 30 feet away, and you'll take your reading and you'll walk to that tree. And you might have to weave to get there because you can't do it perfectly. There's other trees in the way. But then you get to that tree, you find another one 30 feet away, and you take your reading. And Boy Scouts, remember this? Girl Scouts, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. And you keep doing it step by step by step. And it always, always works because you have an outside reference that tells you where you're going, and you always know that the way that you are going is true and right. Very different than if you don't have a compass and you just depend upon your own internal sense of direction. Okay, and I know pilots know all about this, right? You can't count on how you feel about things, because sometimes airplanes turn upside down, inside out. They'll turn over in the clouds. And I've actually had a pilot, a friend of mine, he explained this to me once when I was writing my book. I was doing some research, and he said, I can take you up into an airplane, put you in a cloud at night, make 2 or 3 little turns, take you out of that cloud, and you are upside down, but you will never know it. And you'll look up, which is down, and you will see the stars in the sky, but the stars in the sky are not stars in the sky. They are the lights on the ground. And if you start going up, which is down, you will crash into the earth. It's kind of dangerous stuff, isn't it? And all of that because you're depending upon your own sense of direction. You got to trust the instruments, right? And I think life is a lot like that. And I think that's what we're doing here in church. We're getting that outside sense of direction. And it comes from God. And we get these pointers to head in the right direction so that no matter where we go, we always know where true north is. We always know where the true things are. And we can take our course right off of that. And that's going to be the sermon series for the next few weeks. And the first one I've chosen is the topic of forgiveness. And I've chosen it because it's the hardest one. And I talked to my family last night. They said, "Oh, that was way too broad." And I said, "I know. It's because it's such a big topic. I don't know how to put it all into one sermon. I wish I could." But we're going to be talking about forgiveness over and over and over again. And you know what? Tree, tree, tree. Just like walking through life. We got to keep that one going all the time, because here's the thing. If you depend upon your own internal sense of direction and someone hurts you, I'm going to guess that your first response is not going to be to forgive them. If you're anything like me, that's going to be the case, right? What's the first response when someone hurts you? Revenge. Get them back, right? And that seems to have some rewards, doesn't it? You get them back, you get payback, you get satisfaction. Except the problem with that is you're upside down in the airplane. And you think up is down, but down is up. And you go for revenge, and you go for retribution, and you hate this person. You say, "I'm never going to forgive this person." And man, that's just messed up. And all of a sudden, the direction that you wanted to keep and the course that God wants for your life, the course of peace, the course of new life, the course of a purpose that's greater than yourself, it just gets tossed on the back burner for a different set of purposes. Hatred, revenge, retribution, and most of all, pain. Man, we just can't live that way. That's just messed up. And so, God says, don't go there. A friend of mine, Mike Householder, he's a pastor down at Lutheran Church of Hope in West Des Moines. Actually, I should say Mike's not a friend. Mike's everybody's friend because he's on the television all the time, right? I am actually real friends with Mike's brother, but I like to call Mike my friend because he's such a good preacher. And you know, he talks about this very issue about the way when you get hurt, you want to hold on to it, and it's like that person and that hurt ends up renting space in your life, and that's not good space, because they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the hurt gets larger and larger and larger, and the desire for retribution becomes so big that it's the only thing that matters. And pretty soon, the people that hurt you don't even matter. All that matters is the hurt itself. A few years ago now, I did a funeral for a gentleman, a member of our congregation, and his two daughters were there, and they hadn't spoken to each other in 25 years. And they made no bones about it. They hated each other. And I talked to each one of them individually, and I said, "So what started all this?" And neither one of them could remember what started all of it. All they knew was that one hurt the other, and then the other one hurt back, and it became a cycle. And that hurt started renting space in their lives, so that all that mattered was the hurt. Where are you going? How do you want to live your life? Do you want people to rent space? Do you want things like that to rent space in your life and become the center of your life? Let's sing. Okay. So I started doing some research for this sermon, and I wanted to find that passage in the Gospels about Jesus. And Peter says to Jesus, "How many times should I forgive?" Up to 7 times. And you know what's the response? Jesus says, "No, 70 times 7." Right? But I couldn't remember. I knew it was in Matthew someplace, but I couldn't remember where. So I got out BibleGateway.com, which, by the way, doing Bible research, it's not rocket science. All it takes is 10 fingers and a computer. And you get onto Bible Gateway and you start looking for stuff, and it just takes you in all kinds of interesting places. And that's what happened to me this week. So I typed in the words 70 and 7, and I got 2 hits. And I'm thinking, whoa, 2 hits, that's it. There's only 2 places in the Bible where the words 7 and 70 occur in the same passage. One of them is, as you would expect, Matthew chapter 18. The other one, and this is depressing, folks, is Genesis chapter 4. It's just sobering. And you know, whenever you have something like that where there's 2 passages that have exactly the same words, and only 2, you can count on it. They're connected. These are connected in an opposite way. Genesis chapter 4. It's the story of a guy by the name of Lamech. And I've read this story before, but I'd forgotten it. It's so obscure and it's so small. Lamech is the great, I had to count him, grandson of Cain. And y'all know what happened with Cain, right? Cain didn't like the way God responded to his offering, and he became angry, and he became bitter, and he murdered his brother. And so, you know, God says you can't live here anymore. And so Cain says, well, help me out here, God. People are going to kill me. And so God puts a mark on his head, and then God says, and this is important, God says, whoever hurts you, they're going to have vengeance placed upon them 7 times. Now, I've always read that to be that God was going to place vengeance on them, but now I'm reading it differently because of Lamech. It's not God. This is God saying, hey, I know you, Cain. I know what's going to happen. Somebody hurts you, you're going to get them back because that's what's in your heart. You're going to put that vengeance on them 7 times. So what happens now is Cain has children. And Cain passes his vengeful and hurting and angry heart down to his children. And they pass that vengeful, angry, and hating heart down to their children, and so on and so forth, until we get to Lamech, who decides he's going to kill someone as well, and he has known this all his life, and he's known it generationally. And so he says, after he kills someone, he says to his wives, he said, you know, Cain, if someone hurt him, it was going to be vengeance 7 times, but it's not for me. It's going to be 70 times 7. You see what's happening here, folks? Now I want you to look into the eyes of your children. Think about what we're passing to them when we let folks rent space in our lives like that. And how that bitterness is not only toxic to us, but it becomes toxic to our families as well. Let's sing. So Peter says to Jesus, Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? Up to 7? And you know what Jesus is thinking. He says, yeah, that's fine, but what about when it gets to number 8? Then we're right back renting space away in our lives again. And so Jesus says, he picks up on Genesis chapter 4, and he turns it upside down. And he says, no, not 7. You forgive them 70 times 7. Now, let's be clear about what we're talking about here. Forgiveness is letting go of the hurt and the pain so that it no longer lives in your life. Let's also be clear. Forgiveness is not being a doormat. It's not letting somebody hurt you over and over and over again. It's that you don't give them permission to do that. You don't have to necessarily trust them. You don't have to let them continue to do it over and over again. But Jesus says, let it go. Let the pain go. Let the hurt go. Let the retribution go. Because this is a matter of your life. This is a matter of your soul. This is a matter of your sense of direction. And you know, sometimes that's easy, and sometimes that's hard. Sometimes you take that compass out and you take your setting, and it's wide open spaces, and it's an easy thing to forgive, and you can just forgive it and walk right in that direction. And other times, tree to tree to tree. And you have to do it over and over and over again because it hurts so badly. And the pain is so profound that it has a way of creeping back in. We are only human. It's not once for all times in most cases, especially when the pain is deep. It's over and over and over again until that room, that space that's been rented out in your life is demolished. And it's hard to do. You know, a few years ago, a young white man walked into a church in Charleston. And because he hated black people, he sat down at a Bible study. And about halfway through the study, he pulled out a gun and opened fire. And people were murdered. And at the trial, the victims' families had an opportunity to respond. They could say anything they want. And one after the next said, "You hurt me. You changed my life forever. I'm not going to be a doormat. I'm going to be real. I forgive you." One woman said, "I will pray for your soul." And she didn't mean that in a mad way. She meant that, hey, you're messed up. There's something wrong in your life, and I pray that at some point God grabs you. And I'm wondering how people can do that. I'm wondering if it's my wife or my daughter, how I could do that. How about you? But I will tell you this, that it is the way to freedom, to life, to purpose, and to direction. So who has offended you? And where are you going? Maybe that person you live with. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe you live next door to them. Maybe it's a neighbor or a friend. Maybe it's somebody at school that's hurt you and they continue to bully you. And you don't know what to do about it. And it hurts. It's just awful. Maybe it's somebody sitting next to you in the pew. And by the way, if it is, don't stop coming here. Don't walk away from this. Because I will tell you that that person that's hurt you is your way to freedom. You come to this table side by side with them, and you take the sacrament. And every time you walk in here, you remember that you have been hurt. And then, by the grace of God, you offer forgiveness. And it's hard and it's difficult, but stay here. Because that's the only way that the room gets demolished. My greatest hope for this place is that we will be a place, this is going to sound funny, where people hurt each other. Not that I want that, but that's what's going to happen. and a place where people bring that hurt in here. And we take out our compass. And we find true north. And then we set our direction on the next tree, and the next tree, and the next tree. And it will change us, and it will make us new and right. And it will give to us, as a people, what God gives to each of you individually when he stretched out his arms and was nailed to the cross and said to you, Father, forgive them, for they know not what to do. And for that, we give God thanks and praise. Amen.